The second reason we see businesses that are up and running and beyond that 5 years fail are what we call costing issues. And the problem here can be in the planning stage or in the execution stage of what you do. Let's walk through examples of each. So in the planning phase, this is going, how much is it going to cost me to deliver the product or service that I want to sell to my clients or prospective clients? A real life example of a business that we got called in to work with had miscalculated their costing significantly. They have a product that they sell for over $100,000 and they had messed up their costings. Essentially what they were doing was, let's say they were selling a product for $100,000. All the costs associated with producing that $100,000 cost around about $93,000 to $95,000. And you might go, how on earth did they do that? Well, when they worked out the price, they got the $93,000 to $95,000 wrong. They thought it was more like $50,000. So they completely messed up what their costings were and had already committed orders at the price of $100,000, knowing in a sense there was nothing they could do with the costs because it was their mistake. That's an extreme example of poor cost planning prior to the execution stage. But quite often it's not as dramatic as that. It can revolve around not knowing the true cost of delivery or freight, the true cost of your materials, the true cost of product, the true cost of labor that goes into what you are selling, and you are simply not selling that product or service at a high enough price for the costs that need to go to produce that outcome. Again, it sounds so simple, but the planning in what they're delivering is not being done in an appropriate way. We've looked at the planning stage of when costs can become an issue for a business. So before you do any of the work. Then there's the execution stage, the actual doing of the work. So you might have planned to win a project and get a 40% gross profit, and the costings are absolutely spot on. But what about when you go to execute that job? Are you tracking the true cost of what it is for all the freight, the materials, the labor that go into delivering that product, service, or project? The other element is, what degree of flexibility do you have for when costs change? So for example, if you planned 6 months ago that a material was going to cost $100 to deliver this, and now it's $120, what does your contract say? Does it allow you to change the price that you charge the client? Do you have variations to allow you to capture that increase in cost, or mechanisms within the contracts to allow you to charge more for your clients? What about on a product where the product was $100, now it's $120? Are you constantly looking at how to pass on those cost increases to your clients and maintaining your margin, not going backwards? The other element of this is blowout. You would have heard those phrases around project blowouts where the costs just went through the roof. How frequently are you looking at the financial information to let you know if those blowouts are potentially going to occur? The reality is costs can move very, very quickly. COVID was a classic example of this, where costs were constantly increasing. Someone we work with, where they sell a product that is a relative commodity, similar to fuel, it's really easy to match their product versus another product or other alternatives compared to their price. And let's say the price of that product was $100. With what was happening with COVID, we'd done research and we realized that the underlying cost of delivering that product was actually going to be more than $100. So if they were selling it for $100 today, they were actually going to cost more per unit than $100 very, very swiftly. But the problem was nobody else in the market was changing. It'd be the equivalent of running a grocery store and everyone was selling their bread for $3 a loaf, but you all of a sudden charge $6 a loaf and everyone else keep their price at $3 per loaf. Naturally, you're not going to be selling much bread. What we decided was to hold for a moment because we thought something was weird was going on, something unusual was going on. We held on for a week at that same price, but then everyone else's prices changed. So we were actually quite slow in moving, which wasn't a great example of this situation, but it also comes back to the reality that if the statistics tell you that your costs are going up, don't be the last person to change because you're going to have to incur the losses from those increasing costs. So the underlying products that produce what they were selling had gone up so much that they were selling at a loss for around about a week. But again, they had the information to know that as soon as they saw someone else's price increase, they knew it was on the back of the same data that they were seeing. So if you see it first, action first. Otherwise, you're going to be at risk of compromising your financial position. What do we do in the costing stage, whether that's planning or in execution? Again, it comes back to knowing and trusting your numbers. The accurate and timely information on a particular product. So like the item we just spoke about a moment ago where they were selling it for $100 to all of a sudden it was costing more than $100 to produce. Making sure you've got your finger on the pulse with that information and passing on the price increases as quickly as possible. And trying to have contract provisions in place to allow prices to go up or down depending on underlying information within the contract, whether that's steel prices, fuel prices, labor prices, a form of mechanism that can be used to structure those contracts. But I strongly believe, and you might have heard this in other videos, to succeed in business, you need to know what it costs you to deliver whatever it is you're delivering. And I keep saying product, service, or project. You need to know what those costs are. If you know the costs, you instinctively know if what you're charging is enough. And it's not always going to be as simple as a place where the cost is suddenly more than the price. It's more often the margin between the price that we sell it for and the cost to deliver is eroded. So we want to make sure that gap is as wide as possible to ensure we don't use the costing phase as a reason to fail in business.